Hello and welcome back to painting old NASCAR cars on GIMP for iRacing. And today this video is hopefully short and sweet, but what we want to cover is how to make a spec map for your car. So I'm going to do it from start to finish, and if you guys just follow along, it's really easy. You can kind of see how all this works. First thing I want to do is open up iRacing, and we're going to get to our paint shop so we can see our car. Alright, and the car we're going to work on today is Jeff Gordon's 2004 car. This is the one that they drove after Atlanta in like Phoenix, Darlington, and Homestead. So it's his regular paint job with the Always in Our Hearts decal on the front and these two DuPont logos here. So first let's start off. We're going to export this to our car viewer so we can see it. And take a quick look here without the spec. And that's the car. And what we really want here is for this blue to be a metallic blue. And the way iRacing currently works is your metallics, your base colors need to be darker than your than what you would do for like a sim stamped number. That may change with a future update, but for now, that's why it looks a little light bluish. But when we apply our spec map, then we're going to see it change. Now, I do already have a spec map made for this car, but not for the one with the Always in Our Hearts decals. So I am going to just demonstrate here real quick what that spec map would look like as a kind of a finished product. And the way we work these is we're going to, if we want to see it in our paint shop, for instance, we're going to go to export as our same folder, but instead of it naming it car num for the custom number, we're going to change it to car spec. And then underscore your, whatever your ID is. And when we export it, then we're going to go back to our paint shop, and that's the color that that's the color. This is the color that we want the car to be. Now you can obviously see here, because this is on here, it's not set right for these decals. So we're going to fix that. But how did we get to this point? All right, so we're going to turn that old one off. Let's turn on this. This is what comes with your iRacing, just standard, when you download their template. Now, if you're using GIMP, the way we do spec maps is a little different. They use it more in shades of gray, and we use red, green, and blue. So what we are going to want to do here, first of all, when I open this up, we see our red channel metallic here, and it's got parts in it, and it's got a base paint. If I take the base paint out, then you can see the parts that they have in here, okay? But we're not going to want to use that because our car has a different decal package and everything on it, so this really isn't going to do anything for us. So for now, we're just going to delete that. And then same with the green parts, we're going to delete. Okay. And that's going to leave us with these shades of gray in our red and blue and green and all that. Okay. So let's just talk about the blue real quick first, because blue is pretty simple. So the way blue works is if you have it set to 0 to, I think, 16, maybe 12, but basically fully black. If it's fully black, then the clear coat layer is not activated. For most paints, if you're doing just kind of like a standard metallic or kind of a regular paint job, you a lot of times don't have to use the clear coat layer. It does have its uses. It can be useful, but a lot of times you don't need to use it. So for just a basic spec, just for kind of like starting out, I would say just leave it black. Then we're going to want to go to our green layer. And what we want to do here to make this work correctly is we're going to go to our color picker here, and we want to go to max green, okay? And you can see these different settings you can choose. I like to use the 255 color setting, just what works for me. You can really use either one. This is more of like a percentage base, but either way, you want it to be maximum green, 0 blue, 0 red, okay? And then you can just take your fill bucket and fill that in. All right, and then when we turn on our red layer, right now our red layer is black. We want to make this maximum red, okay? And so if we click that, now we have a red and a green, and our blue layer is black. Just to expand a little bit on that blue layer, if you did start using the clear coat, then the higher the shade of blue, the more dull your paint job is, okay? So your maximum clear coat is actually a very, very dark shade of blue, like 16 or 18 or whatever out of 255. That's like the max clear you can have on the car. And then at the same time, if you go to all the way to 255, then it's going to give you a very matte color. So again, you kind of just have to know what that means. With the red layer, a max red value is like a chrome, okay? So if we export this to our car spec as a chrome, then we're going to see what it does. It makes it like very, very shiny. Look at that red there, that reflection that it gives you there. But that's what you'll get out of a chrome, very metallic finish. All right, let's turn off the red. Let's go with the green. So if we go with max green, green is your roughness layer. So if you go with a max green, it operates kind of similar to the clear coat. This is going to be very, very dull. You can see it. It's just 0 reflection on it at all if you did just a max green for your spec. Okay. So unless you're going for like some kind of matte look, I mean, I don't know if you would ever really use a maximum green level on anything. Usually everything has some layer of shine. I think Mythbusters even did an episode where they actually polished a turd, right? And it had some layer of shininess to it. So everything should have some layer of shine, but here you go. If you did max, that would be a very dull looking job that would not reflect any real light. It's you know, you can see the window here has some reflection. The paint job itself has none. All right. So the reverse of that's true as well. So if we go for, I think the iRacing standard spec map is somewhere around maybe like 5 to 10% on a green, which we'll get into percentages here, but something like this. Okay, you get some layer or level of reflection going on just a normal iRacing spec. Okay, so that's that. It might be a little more than that. I can't remember. I think if I take the color picker, I can tell you what this is. At 10%, we're at 26. No, so they're more like 66. So let's take that up to say, let's try 20%. And let's see what that is. 25 maybe. Yeah, they're probably like 25% for their normal. You know, so if you had a map on there from iRacing, it would look something like that. Okay. And that's just sort of, they've never actually, I don't think, released or any said exactly what they do, but it's just sort of me like matching it up over the years. It was something like this. Okay. All right. So, but how do we actually spec this car? Because right now we're just got an all over map and we want different values for different parts of our paint job. So let's go ahead and we're going to put this back to maximum. And I always just like to leave this on the green layer first. I kind of do everything on my green first and then go from there. So what you can do is you can take your Alt and Shift button and you can select multiple parts of the car. Okay, so I'm selecting, and just to be clear, this is in my paintable area. Okay, you could actually turn off technically if you wanted to turn off your spec map and you could go select so you could see what you're doing, you could do it this way too. It doesn't really matter. But we want to select all the parts of the car that are not going to be part of the metallic blue layer. So that'll be like my spoiler, any little extra pieces that you don't want to be spec mapped. My decals, I'll select all my decals. I want to select all my numbers too. So numbers here. I want to get my headlights and tail lights and all that stuff. My contingencies. Parts of my roof camera actually. So the lens, stuff like that. And then I actually have to go down into the actual paint job itself and all the pieces, the red and the yellow, all that stuff that I don't want as part of my blue paint. So pretty much everything is selected, right? And we're just looking around there, see if we missed anything. All right. And you can break this down in different ways. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to make kind of everything that's not part of the blue its own layer. Sometimes, depending on the car, you may say, hey, you know, I want the numbers to be a different, you know, spec than my decals and things like that. In my experience with NASCAR paints, generally, I feel like a lot of times they have a very similar level of shine from wrap, you know, and all the decals and everything. Everything's kind of like very close, you know, it's like all the same vinyl stuff, so it has the same level of shine. But there are times when you may need certain things to be more matte or not, and you can select those out. But you don't. It just depends what kind of job you're trying to do. But for this, we're just going to use this. So we're gonna use the cut tool and cut all of that out of our green layer, and then we're going to paste it, and we're just going to call this G parts. If I can type, I cannot. G parts 1. So I can now toggle this on and off, and I can see what I've got. All right. Now the other thing I need to do is, I know everything that's opposite of the parts is going to be on my red layer, because that's what my blue paint is. So the easy thing for me to do is I can turn on my red layer, I can alt click on my G parts that I just made, then I can cut and out of my red layer and paste and call this R parts 1. So now I can turn these on and off as desired. So I don't want any red on any of my decals or anything like that. None of that should have any kind of metallic to it. So I'm going to turn that off. My regular parts, I do want them to have some level of shiny. So we're going to put this to 20 opacity. Okay. And one other thing I need to look at here. Make sure these are all set. This is all set correctly. Okay. And I always recommend just start with the original iRacing, because you see they have these channels set up as pass through and things like that. That's so that your opacities work correctly with each other. So you want that set. But if you just start with the iRacing spec map, then you're going to be good. Okay. So we set this to a lower opacity level. Now, if I exported this now, then what we're going to see is we've got a very dark metallic blue, and the rest of our car has some kind of minor shiny to it. But not really enough shiny. I want it more shiny. So my parts, I want to go now to, let's try 10. And let's export it again. Yeah, now I'm getting some shine on my red and my decals and things like that. But it's not nearly as shiny as this blue, because the blue is maximum metallic right now. And the paint shop doesn't always do a great job of showing that, but when you got it out there, it would be really metallic, way too shiny. We don't want it to be that shiny. We want it some shiny though. The other thing is we've got a maximum rough underneath that metallic. So when we start to make the opacity levels different, it's going to change things. So honestly though, I want my numbers stuff, I want them to be a little shinier, believe it or not. So we're going to go to 5. Yeah, I just want it to be a little shinier, really pop. Okay, so we've isolated all of our parts. Now, how do we get the rest of our blue the levels that we want it to be? So here's a good example of something when it's really shiny and you kind of go to the side of the car and you see down the side of it. It just is like, it's just too shiny. It's not right. All right. And I want to mirror what I did before. Sorry about that. So I want to mirror what I did on the last spec map I made for this car. So if we go to the settings here, I can see what I set the opacity levels to. So I have my red set to 75, and my green set to 25. All right, so let's try that. So 75 for the green, and you can see that now I get this kind of orangey color. And we'll set the base paint to 25. Now I get more of a deeper red. And when I export to the map, now I have a little less shiny paint, but more of the metallic that I am looking for. Now every paint job you do is going to be different. So if you certain cars, you're going to want different settings. It's not just, for silvers, a lot of times I use a 70 on my red and a 40 on my green, for instance. And that's just generally how I feel like I get the best silver colors out of it. Okay. But then, other ones you may want more metallic, and you may want less roughness or vice versa. It just depends what you're trying to achieve with it. So, and then let's just, for fun, let's go ahead and demonstrate what the blue layer does here. So right now you can see the paint is looking pretty good here, but let's add a blue layer to it. So if I make this blue layer have, let's change it to 90. I'm sorry, I'm messing this up. We want it to be 100. So blue layer should always be 100. But what we want to do here is change the color. So let's turn off our green and our red. And let's just change this blue to, let's make it maximum blue, just for no reason really. And if I do that, and I export this to the spec map, so now you can see, kind of like when we had the maximum green, we get a very dull finish, right? There's no shine to it at all. Okay. Now let's take it to the other extreme. Let's make it blue layer level of 19. So it's a very, very dark blue now. And we export. And now you can see here we have a very shiny layer on top of what our paint is. Okay, you can see the shine on all these parts of it. Now, why is this different? Well, the reason it's different is it's the way that the light interacts on iRacing. So you can kind of see it here. So it's kind of hard to see in the paint shop, to be honest with you. But it creates a clear coat like you would see in real life over something. So the reflection is coming off of the coat over the top of your paint. And this can create some interesting effects. What it really does to me is it kind of creates this it's sort of like a whitish kind of glow effect on the paint. And sometimes you like that and sometimes you don't. It really just depends. For NASCAR, I mean, unless the car is painted, a painted car with a clear coat, but usually NASCAR isn't like that. It's a vinyl wrap, so it doesn't really have a clear coat on it. So there are times when I find it useful, but a lot of times, so this is kind of what I'm talking about, this white kind of reflective light on there. You don't really get that with the other making it more metallic or making it have a lower roughness. I don't really see that effect. So again, it's kind of a cool thing. It's useful, and if you're trying to create certain effects is generally when I'll use it. If you're trying to make a pattern in the paint, sometimes you can use it. So you really have to play with it and kind of see, what it is that you're trying to accomplish and whether that's gonna achieve that goal. But that's how it works. Now, if I were to put this in conjunction with our other set and export it, so now I get this with the maximum clear coat on top of it. So like I said, it kind of creates a cool effect. I will say, though, it seems to me in iRacing, when you do something like this, you make it a maximum clear coat on stuff, when the light hits it in iRacing, sometimes it'll look kind of washed out almost, because you get a big diffused white light across your paint job. You can't really replicate that in this paint shop very well, but you'll definitely see it. So you always want to look at that anytime you do these spec maps or anything. It always helps to look at it in game as well, because you'll notice that, hey, this looks really good in paint shop, and then you get it in the game and you're like, it wasn't what I was actually going for. So you can kind of double check yourself in the game and see if it's really looking how you want. And then with iRacing, if you do them at night, sometimes they're a little different looking as well. So there's a lot of different factors that go into whether you want to use that or not. But ultimately, for this job, we're going to put it back to its fully black and export, and there we go, back to what I originally had. So this is the car now, and that is how you make a spec map with GIMP in iRacing. Like I said, you can do more with cutting different parts out. So for instance, if I said, well, you know what, this is all the same color, but I really need my spoiler and my side skirts and my nose, I want those to be a little duller than the rest of my paint job. It's kind of common. So once again, we can Alt Shift select all these pieces that we would want. Okay. Let's say the shark fin, stuff like that. So actually what we could do here is we could cut them out of our parts here. And I usually, sometimes with GIMP, I have had this happen where it's been a little weird. So let's just cut and paste here. Yeah, okay. So you can see it's going to default it to the maximum green value when you cut it out. That's fine. But let's say I wanted to make those a little duller. So let's make those 15. Okay, so now your spec map shows these as being a little different. And if you export them, then you can see a little bit of difference between how the spoiler reacts to the light compared to how the rest of the paint job does. Really, that just depends more like if they had a painted spoiler or not. Some teams did, and some teams did not. Your side skirts typically would be a little duller than the rest of the paint job on the side, so you would maybe want that. Maybe that nose tape isn't quite as reflective as the vinyl on the body, things like that. So you can do it that way. You could say, well, the contingencies, they're blending in too much. I want them to be different, and you could go select all of those in the same way. So let's say we grab the contingencies and we pulled those off. And we say, well, we want these to be kind of in between what the skirts and stuff are. Okay, fine. So let's do that. Export the map. And now there's going to be a slight reflective difference between the decals and the rest of the paint. So again, all of that, you can make the call if you think that that's how it should be, if that's worth it to you. Sometimes, like I said, I find that when I look at the cars, unless you're like right up on it, you really couldn't necessarily tell a lot of difference between the shiny level of the decals and the rest of the paint job. They were all kind of similar on a lot of cars. So a lot of times I don't necessarily do that just because I don't see them stand out that much. But again, it's always going to depend on the car. So that is that. I hope you liked this video. Hopefully it helps you with your spec maps and how to make them for GIMP. It's really not super hard. It's not really super complicated. The biggest thing that I find is when you make your paints, if you keep everything organized, then it makes it a lot easier on you. So if you have all your numbers in one spot, in one group, and it's easy to select all of them. If you want to select your contingencies, it's easy to select all of them. And then, you're not having to select each decal individually. That takes too long, So if you've got everything kind of set, it's just going to make your life a little easier. If you don't, then you'll have to sit there and you'll have to click side skirt and spoiler and, all your little pieces and all the stuff one at a time. And you may or may not want to do that. So, but generally, if you've got it all well organized, then it's very easy to select all the groups that you want and then change these levels how you want, and then you're good to go. So, undo all the stuff I did because I am going to leave it how it was. So that is it. That is making a spec map in iRacing in GIMP. And good luck out there.